Good morning, everyone. Today, we are going to do a new lesson titled Kindly Adjust to Our English, and it is by Shashi Tharoor. I am sure all of you know who Shashi Tharoor is, right? He's an author, he's also a politician, and he was also an international civil servant. But he is also known as a person who is a very good writer, who's got a grasp over the vocabulary of English, right? He's also a politician, as I said earlier. I think it is his third term as an MP. He is representing the Thiruvananthapuram constituency, and he's also the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Information Technology. Uh, I think sometime back he had served as the Minister of State for Human Resource Development and Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. Uh, he also had a three-decade long career at the United Nations. He was part of the UN. He served as a peacekeeper, a refugee worker, and an administrator at the highest levels. And he was also the Under Secretary General during the time when Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, this particular essay that has been prescribed for you, kindly adjust to our English. It was written by Shashi Tharoor in 2018 and it appeared in the June 3rd edition of the Week magazine. Now, this particular essay is a very humorous description of how Indians use English. Or we can say Shashi Tharoor tries to trace the Indianisms that have crept into the English language. So I'll just read the essay. It's a very short essay, but it's very humorous, very hilarious, and it's very interesting, right? So I'll just read this and then we can just go through it as I read it. It starts like this. I have long immodestly considered myself the inventor of the term prepone. I came up with it at St. Stephen's in 1972, used it extensively in conversations, and employed it in an article in JS Magazine soon after. So he starts by saying that the term prepone, that is so liberally used by Indians today, had been invented by him when he was studying in St. Stephen's College, Delhi in 1972. And he says, prepone as a back construction from postpone seems so much simpler to a teenage collegian than saying, could you move that appointment earlier? Or I would like to advance that deadline. Now, what is a back formation? I think in the fourth semester, when we learned linguistics, especially word formation, we talked about back formation, right? So, a back formation is the process of creating a new word by removing the suffixes or prefixes from another word. So he formed the word prepone from the word postpone. So he removed the prefix pre and post, and he added a new prefix to it, right? And he created postpone. Another example of back formation is edit, where you create the word edit, the verb edit from the longer word editor. So you have learned about back formation. So he uses it here. He says that it was easier to use the word prepone than saying, could you move that appointment earlier, or could you advance that deadline, right? So to move something earlier. So that is what prepone means. And today prepone has become a very common word in India. Over the years, I was gratified to see how extensively its use had spread in India. Now, in an era where too many claim credit for others' work, I feel it may be time to clarify the word's origins. Is anyone aware of an earlier usage? He says today this word is used so extensively. It is used throughout India and throughout the world, I guess. And he says, now a lot of people are coming forward and they claim authority for that, or they say that we are the authors, or they claim authorship for that word. And he says, I think it's time for me to step in and say that I am the person who coined this word, because I don't think there was any other usage of this particular word before I coined it in 1972. So that's how he starts this essay. He goes on to say, I ask because the persistence and survival of what is called Indian English, often with a sneer, that he puts into brackets, often with a sneer, as if to differentiate it from the Queen's proper English. So PROPER is pronounced proper because in English, the final R is silent. So he says proper English and he has put it as PROPAH in quotes. That's just to make fun of it. Right? He says, today we differentiate Indian English from the received pronunciation or the Queen's proper English. And he says, should we actually take it seriously? Should we consider this differentiation very seriously? Our English or the Indian English is a vigorous language which draws strength from local roots. If Americans can say fall for autumn and gotten for have got, though both are archaisms in England itself, why can't Indians say for long, fortnight, and do the needful, even if these have fallen out of use centuries ago in London? So he says, why do people use the term Indian English? Why should we differentiate between Indian English and the Queen's proper English or the received pronunciation? Because Indian English or the English that is spoken in India is a very vigorous language, right? And it's got the Indian flavor to it. He says, see, Americans would say fall for autumn. They don't say autumn, they say fall, right? They say fall season. And they don't say, I have got it. They say, gotten it. Now, gotten and fall are not used in England today. It's an archaic term. It was used long back, but today it's not used. But people accept when Americans say fall or when Americans say gotten. Similarly, why don't people accept it when we say furlong? Now, what's a furlong? Furlong is a measure of a distance, and it would be approximately 201 meters. And it was used long time back in England. Today, it's no longer used. It's fallen out of their vocabulary. But in India, we still say furlong, right? We say furlong, we say fortnight, we say do the needful, right? Would you do the needful? This magazine is published every fortnight. So fortnight means every 2 weeks. Now, fortnight, furlong, and do the needful have fallen out of use centuries ago in England. But Indians still use it, and people look down upon Indians when they use this, and they say it is Indian English. So he says, why should you say that when Americans are still accepted for saying fall and gotten? Why is it that people look down on Indians when they say for long, or when they say fortnight, or when they say do the needful? So many words in Indian English have stood up to the test that matters. And what is the test that matters? The test of time and usage. If enough people find a word or a phrase useful, it is, to my mind, legitimate. So according to Shashi Tharoor, it is legitimate and it is right to use a particular word if it is convenient. If people think it's convenient, you can use it. You don't have to bother whether it fell out of vocabulary in some country long time back. Today, if you find it convenient to use for long, if you find it convenient to use fortnight, use it, because the language always stands the test of time. A language, the test of language is the test of time. So if it has stood the test of time, you can use it. That is what he says. Indian English is a living, practical language used by millions every day. Many phrases we take for granted in ordinary conversation are actually quite unusual abroad. Calling elders auntie or uncle, for that instance, or using non-veg to convey a willingness to eat meat, that doesn't make them wrong or even quaint. It just makes them Indian. So he says, Indian English is a very interesting language, and it is used by a lot of Indians every day. And we use certain words in our daily conversation, which would seem quite odd or unusual when it is used in a foreign context. For example, we call everybody auntie or uncle, right? But in foreign countries, nobody calls a lay person auntie or uncle. You are an aunt or an uncle only if you are related to the family, right? If it is your father's sister, or your mother's sister, or your father's brother's wife, it's aunt. You cannot call anyone on the street auntie, or anyone on the street uncle. But that is what we do in India. And he says that's very quaint. I mean, that's very interesting because it is typical Indian. So why should we have a problem with that? And the use of the term non-veg, that's particularly Indian because the correct usage is non-vegetarian, right? And we don't say non-vegetarian, we say non-veg, right? Are you non-veg? So it is like it's a very Indian expression, and he says there's nothing wrong in it because it is typical Indian. Some Indian English was created by our media. So he says the media in India have created certain words which are very typical to India. For example, air dash. The chief minister air dashed to Delhi. Now, air dash is rushed by air, right? So that word was coined by Indian media. And history sheeter. The police explained that habitual criminal X was a history sheeter. History sheeter means a person who had has a long criminal record. So this word history sheeter was also coined by the Indian media. Some, like my prepone, came from school and college campuses. Mugging. Now, what is mugging? Did you mug for the exam? We would ask, right? Now, mugging in India means cramming for an exam, learning by heart, right? You cram for an exam. But mugging in the foreign context has two different meanings. So he says it means two very different things abroad. One is a criminal assault by a robber. A second one, an elaborate or often comically exaggerated expression. Now, that is what mugging means abroad. They don't mean cramming when we talk by mugging, right? So when they say mugging, it's either a criminal assault or it is an exaggerated expression. So when we go abroad and we say I've mugged for an exam, they're definitely shocked because for them mugging has two different meanings. But this word mugging, which is equivalent to cramming, is typically Indian. Some Indian Englishisms are merely translated from an Indian language. What is your good name? That is typical Indian. You know, many Indians come and say, what is your good name, please? Now, why is this used? Because in West Bengal or the Bengalis, they have this two names. They have this dark name, dark, even, we also have that dark name. Dark name means the name by which you're called, right? Dark name, and also your bhalo name. Bhalo name is your good name, right? Or the official name. So we also have that pet name. We call that pet name and official name. So when we want to know a person's official name, we ask him, what is your good name? Bhalo naam, right? Bhalo naam is good name, right? So some Indian Englishisms are merely translated from an Indian language. What is your good name is a classic. Since all Bengalis have a dark name, a dark naam that they are called by, and a bhalo naam or good name for the record. So dark naam is your pet name and bhalo naam is your official name. But what is your good name is still the most polite form in any version of the English language for finding out the identity of your interlocutor. Interlocutor means a person who is involved with you in a conversation or dialogue. So he says, what is your good name is translated from this Bengali usage, Daknam and also Bhalonam. It is applicable to almost all states, right? But today in India, this particular usage, what is your good name, has become the most polite way of asking the other person his or her official name. Continuing, some Indianisms are creative uses of an ordinary English word or phrase to reflect a particular Indian sensibility, such as kindly adjust. Now, kindly adjust is usually said apologetically by the seventh person squeezing onto a bench meant for four. So, what he says is, some of the expressions are very creative Indian expressions which particularly reflect the Indian scenario or the Indian sensibility. Now he says, suppose you have a bench or in a bus, it'll be a two-seater, but the third person will come and squeeze and say, kindly adjust. So that is actually very Indian. That's only done in India. Usually in foreign countries, nobody does it. If it's a two-seater, only two people will sit. If we have a three-seater, five-seater car, what happens in India? We kind of squeeze people at the back. So it's kindly adjusting, right? So this kindly adjust term has been formed as extension of an Indian sensibility. Our matrimonial ads have created their own cultural tropes. Tropes are figurative use. Wheatish complexion, of course, and better still, traditional with modern outlook. These are all typical Indian. Wheatish complexion, right? Because we have here wheat grows, so we always like, we don't say fair or dark, we say wheatish complexion. And we also say a traditional person with a modern outlook. It's an oxymoron actually, right? But this is typical Indian and it reflects the Indian sensibility. I'll continue. But acknowledging the legitimacy of Indian English and many of its formulation doesn't mean that anything goes. So he says that, okay, you accept the Indian English or you accept the Indian terminologies that are created, but it doesn't mean that you can use anything or that everything is acceptable. Some things are simply wrong. He says sometimes Indians use wrong terminologies or they use the wrong words. The Indian habit of saying, I will return back, is an unnecessary redundancy. Now, what is redundancy? It's a repetition. When you say, usually Indians say, I will return back. What does return means? Return means come back. So when you say, I will return back, it means I will come back. So it is an unnecessary repetition. So you need not say that, and it is wrong. So he says it is, okay, it's Indian, but that's wrong. You cannot accept everything that is Indian and say it's right. See, I will return back is wrong. You should not use that terminology. The Deshi practice of using till to mean as long as is incorrect English. For example, it is wrong to say, I will miss you till you are away, when you actually mean, I will miss you till you come back. So till is equated to as long as. And when you say, I will miss you as long as you're away, it's correct. But when you say, I will miss you till you're away, it is wrong. You have to say, I will miss you till you come back. So certain usages are not correct. And he brings in a very hilarious description or a hilarious example here. The official doesn't waive off a fine, he just waives it, right? And though he could waive you off if you thank him too profusely. Now, the spelling of waive is W-A-I-V-E. Now, what do you mean by waive? Waive is like, reduce. So when you reduce your fee, it is the correct usage is waive off. But here in India, they don't say waive off. They would say, I waived your fee. That's not correct. It's waiving off. Instead, they say, I waived him off. Now, W-A-V-E. That is, I waived him. I waved at him, not I waved him off. That is wrong. So we try to interchange, right? Instead of using wave for simple W-A-V-E, we say wave off. I waved him off. That's wrong. I waved at him, right? But W-A-I-V-E has to be used with the preposition off. Waive off the fee, right? But instead we say waive it. So this is another example. And then it comes to a very humorous one. And backside for rear. Now, what is rear? Rear, R-E-A-R, rear is actually I would say it's the back part of a building or a vehicle, right? But here we say entry through the backside. Backside is actually used for human beings, right? Backside. And for buildings and vehicles, we use the term rear, R-E-A-R, right? So when we say entry to the backside, it is very it's very incorrect. It's incorrect, and it is not at all nice to hear that, especially when you say that to somebody from abroad. It sounds very vulgar, right? So, and when you put a sign saying entry to the backside, it is very, very vulgar, because what Indians mean is you have to enter through the backside of the building. But for the building or for a vehicle, you say the rear, right? You don't say backside. Backside is usually for human beings. So when you put up a sign saying entry through the backside, it sounds very vulgar. It sounds very off for any person who comes from abroad. So they'll wonder, what is this? It sounds too bad, right? So he says these things cannot be justified under the rubric of Indian English. Rubric means the set of rules. So you cannot justify such kind of usages. They are wrong. They are bad English, they are wrong, you cannot use them. And then he concludes, but for the rest, we have nothing to apologize about. We should defiantly celebrate their use as integral parts of our Indian English vocabulary. After all, we are like that only. And if you don't like it, kindly adjust. See, I am like that only. That is a typical Indian usage. And he says, I am like that only. And if you don't like it, kindly adjust. Kindly adjust is also an Indian usage. So he says we should not use wrong terminologies or bad English. That cannot be accepted as English or Indian English. They are wrong English and they should be done away with. But the others, like air dash, history sheeter, mugging, prepone, such words, furlong, fortnight, all those kindly adjust. I am like this only. All these are typical Indian, which reflects the Indian sensibility. All that can be used because it's part of us, right? So what he means to say that is, as long as India remains an outsourcing hub, yeah, and it keeps on changing millions of lives, and the middle class is kind of swelling, right? English language will continue to flourish in all the small towns and state capitals. This is what is happening today. We are kind of expanding. But we need to understand that even when the obvious workplace edge for English is not there, Indian English would continue to bounce with the vigor and elasticity that makes language beautiful, right? So we have given so many wonderful words to English. We have contributed from India, like khaki, bungalow, shampoo, right? So these words have been given by India, veranda, to English, to the English language. They're loan words. But we have a new generation of Indian English speakers who use words like kindly adjust, I am like this only, time pass, and all this describe a way of life that only those who know the soul of India would understand. They are typically Indian, they reflect the Indian sensibility. So, this is this essay, Kindly Adjust to Our English. I hope it is clear to you. Do you have any doubts or questions? You can ask me now.
It is